Kazuya is an ugly loser who becomes depressed after his mother dies in a mysterious accident. However, his life changes when his clothes turn into a hot chick who trains him to become overpowered so he can clap everyone. It all starts when Kazuya dreams of a beautiful girl wearing an obi, and she somehow feels familiar to him. As the girl disappears, he wakes up in class, accidentally conducting a hand inspection on the class rep's surfboard, and she beats him up for it. Following that, he heads to the school roof and pulls out his late mom's obi from his bag, which is the same one the girl from his dream was wearing. After cherishing it, he turns to leave but finds a wig on the floor. He chooses to ignore it at first, but the wig suddenly comes to life and starts restraining him. Before he can process anything, the wig throws him off the roof, but his mother's obi moves on its own and gives him a soft landing at the bottom. Just then, a blue-haired chick named Kiriha appears from the obi, and when he asks who she is, she knocks him out with a headbutt. Kazuya then spots a mysterious girl standing over him, and when she attacks him, Kiriha pulls him out of the way. She then demands that he agree to serve her if he wants to live, and after Kazuya accepts the condition, Kiriha proceeds to beat the living bejesus out of the wig girl. However, the wig girl stands up once again and tries to attack Kazuya directly, and even though Kiriha puts her shield up, Kazuya takes some of the hits. This infuriates Kiriha so much that she decides to game end the wig girl, but right before her deadly attack connects, Kazuya yells at her to stop. After some time, the wig girl is resting in Kazuya's lap, and Kiriha reveals that she is just an ordinary student who got possessed by the evil wig. She also explains that the wig used the student's desire to possess them, and if Kazuya had been captured, he would have been milked until his sacks were empty. Kazuya still feels flattered that a girl likes him this much, only for Kiriha to reveal that it's actually a boy.
What?
Surprised at this, he asks Kiriha to tell her more about what happened, but she disappears before his eyes. Later, he returns home and immediately hits the bed, still thinking about everything that happened today. After a short nap, he wakes up to find Kiriha sleeping beside him, causing him to scream. After he's calmed down, she reveals that she was formed from the obi his mother had left him, and he must address her as master from now on. However, Kazuya pulls an Uno reverse by reminding her that he owns the obi, which means he's her master instead. Kiriha ignores this and tells him to grab her some snacks because a girl's gotta eat. As she enjoys her food, Kazuya politely tells her not to wreck his room while he goes downstairs to eat with his sister. Later, his sister Kasumi keeps hearing strange noises coming from his room, but Kazuya keeps distracting her, so she doesn't find out about Kiriha. Afterward, he returns to his room, which has been turned into a mess, but Kiriha is nowhere to be found. Thinking she bailed on him, he begins undressing and heads to the shower, only to get an unplotted view of Kiriha's whole package. He starts to imagine all the ways she can isekai him for walking in on her, but Kiriha casually tells him to wash her back because he's her servant.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
After that, she helps him clean up too, and reminds him that they used to do this all the time, but Kazuya has no memory of this. She then notices that he's packing a lot of meat down south, so she decides to give him a hands-on circumcision, leaving the man crying all night. After that, she joins him in bed, reminding him they have always slept together, despite she was just an obi back then. He then notices that she smells like sakura flowers, which reminds him of his mother and helps him relax. However, she suddenly cuddles up to him, and Kazuya stays up all night alongside his newly circumcised soldier. The following day, Kiriha wakes up first and gently blows in his ear to wake him up. However, Kazuya assumes it's his sister and tells her to let him be because he couldn't sleep because of some psycho shawty. Hearing this, Kiriha steps on his coconuts and forces him out of bed. Because of that, he arrives late to school and misses his entire first period, which earns him another beating from the class rep, Chisato. While sitting through it, he recalls how he was in panic because his alarm didn't go off, only to learn that Kiriha broke the whole clock because she found it annoying. He immediately got ready for school, but suddenly stopped when Kiriha wished to join him. When he told her to stay at home, she said he couldn't be away from her because he was her servant. Kazuya started imagining how she'd turn him into a laughing stock at school with her antics, so he begged her to become an obi again. He then wrapped the obi in a plastic bag, placed it in a box, and tied it up, tricking Kiriha into staying home. At present, he's still laughing about being so clever, and his friends Osamu and Shiro think he's lost his last two functioning brain cells. Shiro also tells him about a rumored ghost that appears in school after everyone leaves, but Osamu calls cap on it. When Shiro begins describing it as a hairy monster, Kazuya realizes he is talking about the possessed wig he encountered yesterday. He also believes it will be the perfect test of courage for a couple and starts imagining clapping his crush in a dark alley. Just then, Chisato appears behind him and claps all three of them before reminding them that they still haven't submitted their report. Kazuya immediately begs Osamu to let him copy his, but Chisato drags him to the library and forces him to do it himself. Once there, she keeps a close eye on him and schools him. But seeing him working makes her inner Pookie come out. She recalls how she used to school him when they were younger, and Kazuya admits she was a big help in him passing his exams. With that, he goes back to work. But Chisato gets all shy and asks if she can still come over to his house to teach him some unholy maths. Kazuya gets excited and is about to say yes, but then he remembers he has the devil incarnate at home and tells her some other time. He then finishes his report and gets up to put the book back in the shelf. Chisato also decides to leave, but the library door seems to be locked. Just then, Kazuya spots Kiriha standing next to him and screams, causing Chisato to quickly check up on him. With his face looking like a Botox malfunction, he asks her why she hasn't left already, and she says all the doors and windows are locked shut. After checking everything himself, Kazuya declares that they are trapped, but Kiriha is confused because she didn't do this. She stands on the desk and proudly waits for Kazuya to beg for her help, but Kazuya notices that she's going commando with a short skirt and carries her behind the bookshelves. Kiriha mischievously asks if he's trying to get a sloppy toppy from her, but when he says he's not into crazy chick, she gives him the housewife treatment. After that, she reveals that the door being locked is a work of his spirit, and while ones like her called Sugumomo emerge from household objects, the others come from emotion and are called Amisogi. Sugumomos have a fully developed consciousness, so they behave more rationally, but Amisagi are troublesome and unreasonable like a newborn. Kiriha wants to get to the bottom of who trapped them, but first, she introduces herself to Chisato as Kazuya's cousin who has come here to check the school. Kazuya explains that Kiriha likes occult stuff and might be able to help them, and Chisato buys their story. Kiriha then explains the Amisogi to her and pulls out a pair of kimono claps interwoven with her own hair. These will help them find the Amisagi who was born out of some strong desire, and if they can find the desire, they can untrap themselves with ease. As they scatter to look for the root cause, Chisato and Kazuya both find books that make the claps react, but soon learn that they're reacting to every book in the whole library. Kiriha finally stops using her brain and goes the brawn route, and her magical powers make Chisato's jaw drop. Soon after, Kiriha destroys the whole plane of reality, which causes them to appear in an infinitely expanding library. Immediately after, the books become hostile, and Kiriha uses her powers to block them. However, when they combine to become a literate Optimus Prime, Kiriha suggests they run like little bichons. Soon after, they run into a dead end but manage to lose the giant book monster, only for Kiriha to take all the credit. However, the monster breaks through a wall and finds them, leading to a round 2. The monster then attacks Chisato, but the books automatically protect her, making Kiriha realize she is the only target of this Amisagi. She then asks Kazuya to think back to the conversation he had with Chisato and recall anything significant in it. Kazuya remembers that Chisato wanted to come to his home, but he told her no. Kiriha reveals that Chisato is the one who created this Amisogi because he didn't grant her wish. Kazuya finally puts 2 and 2 together and gently asks Chisato if she'd like to come to his place to teach him, and this causes the Amisagi to disappear. The squad finds themselves back in the library, and Kazuya tells Chisato he finally understands how she feels. However, he mistakes her love for him as her love for the teaching people, leaving her disappointed. On the weekend, Chisato visits Kazuya's house and enters his room, only to find him sleeping with Kiriha. She immediately throws a fit and asks Kazuya why he's still sleeping, only to see that Kiriha broken yet another clock. After they settle down, Chisato apologizes for the mess she caused the other day, but Kiriha tells her it wasn't her fault. She explains that it was caused by malison, which is just a distortion in reality, otherwise called the gaps. She adds that it exists everywhere and reacts to people's wills to shape a new reality, but that reality is often very limited. However, since their encounter was huge, she concludes that there was an abnormally high density of malison present in the library. Kiriha reveals that there is a system that prevents this from happening, and each area is assigned to a local god. The god of this region is Kukuri, and Kiriha blames him for the incident. Meanwhile, Shiro runs into Kokyu, a mommy with giant cannons, and she mistakes him for Kazuya. When he tells her he's not Kazuya, she shows him Kazuya's sketch and says he looks just like him. She then turns to leave, but Shiro tells her he can help her because he's hoping to get crushed between her bazookas.
You naughty, naughty.
He tells her that he and Kazuya are friends, and he can take her to Kazuya if she fulfills his request. A few years ago, Kazuya was knocked unconscious in an accident, and Kukuri was tending to him alongside Kiriha. She was worried things would get worse if he woke up, so she decided to seal his excess spiritual energy, along with memories of the incident. Even though Kiriha knew she would lose her power because he would forget about her, she agreed to it to save Kazuma's life, even if it meant she would be turned into an obi. The following day, Kazuya is leaving for school when his dad asks him to come home early so they can have dinner together. With that, Kazuya walks to school with Kiriha hiding in his bag as an obi. But once he steps into the class, Shiryo immediately drops kick him. He adds that he got into a lot of trouble yesterday because of him, recalling how he took that busty mommy to a cafe. Kokyu wanted to leave to complete her mission, but Shiro bribed her with some food. Once the waitress came to take the order, Kokyu ordered every single item on the menu and ate more than Goku. After she cleaned every plate, the owner raised her hand like she won the World Heavyweight Championship, and she was even offered a complimentary cake. She then left with everyone clapping for her, and when Shiro tried to leave as well, he was forced to pay the huge bill. Later that day, Kokyu went into a shrine where Kukuri scolded her for forgetting her mission, but she argued that she was living on grass and water, and she couldn't resist the hunger. Kukuri then told her to try again tomorrow and wait for Kazuya to leave school before making her move. At present, Kokyu is waiting on the school roof, and during lunch break, Shiro challenges Kazuya to an arm wrestling match for his lunch since he's now a broke boy. Just as they lock hands, the whole class suddenly panics because all of their lunches have been stolen. Chisato quickly walks up to Kazuya and asks if this could be the work of another Amisaji, but Kazuya thinks it must be a thief. Just then, Kokuyo walks into the classroom with lunchboxes in her hands and demands to know where Kazuya is. Shiro immediately panics and points out that she is the same woman who used him as a credit card, demanding that she give his money back. Kokyu says she has no money, and he can fondle her jugs instead.
Finally!
But when Shiro tries to get unholy, he is knocked out by Chisato's flying Raijin. Kokyu then walks up to Kazuya, demanding that he come with her, but Kiriha suddenly takes form and refuses to share her servant with anyone. Kokyu calls her a washcloth girl and tells her to skedaddle, but Kiriha gets serious and is ready to send her back to God. However, Kazuya stops her from turning his classroom into a battlefield, so Kiriha suggests they settle it with an arm wrestling match. They take it to the rooftop, and Kazuya explains that if Kihari wins, she will accompany Kakyu to the shrine. Kiriha then asks the students to remove the table because they'll be trying their own version of arm wrestling. With that, both girls get into position and use only one hand to chop at each other. And after an epic battle, Kiriha comes out on top. As all jaws hit the floor, the school teacher barges in and asks the students why they haven't returned to their classes. Shiro tells him they were caught in an arm wrestling match, but when they turn around, both Kiriha and Kokyu have vanished. Meanwhile, the girls are taking Kazuya and Chisato to the shrine, and on the way, Kazuya feels as if he's been here before. Soon after, they reach the Hakusen shrine, where they come face to face with the goddess Kukuri. Kukuri asks Kokuyu why she's brought Kiriha along, and Kokuyu admits she lost a battle and had to honor her word. When Kukuri praises Kiriha's skills, Kiriha reminds her that she leads her with 125 wins to 123 losses. However, Kukuri thinks she's Delulu because the actual record is 123 wins and 1 draw to her favor. This starts an argument between them, which even starts a thunderstorm. So they put their issues aside for a moment as Kiriha asks Kukuri why the seal broke earlier than anticipated. Kukuri reveals that the seal hasn't been completely broken, and Kazuya's memories tied to the truth remain sealed. Despite this, Kiriha advises her to reapply the seal and soothe the malice and disruptions in the region before things go bad. Kukuri says she can't do that just yet, and then asks Kazuya to oversee the exorcism of the phenomenon in this region. She tells him to clean the malison in the area, but Kiriha quickly steps in and angrily tells Kukuri not to crack such sadistic jokes at this moment. Kukuri says she's not joking and asks Kazuya if he's had any weird encounters in his surroundings lately. When he says yes, she asks him why all these strange events occur only around him, which confuses him. Kukuri then reveals it's because he's the beacon that attracts the malison, and his presence puts everyone around him in danger. Kiriha has had enough and tries to leave with Kazuya, but when an invisible wall blocks their path, Kukuri refuses to let them go until the matter is resolved. She then takes off one of her masks and tries to deal with it the harder way, so Kakyu immediately flies away with Chisato, so she isn't caught in the crossfire. After that, Dark clouds cover the sky as Kukuri asks them to make the most of their final moments. She then uses her water magic to attack them, but Kiriha produces a shield to protect them. Even with 2 layers of protection, Kukuri destroys it with a powerful water spear. So Kiriha creates wings and carries Kazuya in her arms as she dodges all the attacks mid-air. However, when she is struck, she decides to go on the offensive against Kukuri. Sadly, the water goddess proves to be too powerful for her, and Kiriha gets heavily injured. Despite that, she stands up again, and even when Kazuya asks her to stop, she refuses to give up. Seeing this, Kukuri takes a page out of Madara's book by summoning a giant water planet that crushes both Kiriha and Kazuya. Despite Kukuri's strongest attack, Kiriha protects Kazuya using a dome, but as a result, she gets exhausted and even shrinks in size. Kukuri gives her another chance to surrender, but she says she would rather die here than give Kazuya up. Kazuya asks her not to push herself and suggests they just do as Kukuri says, but Kiriha doesn't listen, and the fighting resumes once again. This time, Kiriha is unable to block the impact of Kukuri's attack and passes out inside her dome. As the dome gets flooded, Kazuya wakes up in a strange white world in front of a woman and tells her what happened. The woman eagerly tells him that Kukuri is one tough cookie, and Kiriha doesn't know when she's beat. She then starts making fun of Kiriha for picking a fight with the water goddess, but Kazuya gets annoyed and tries to walk away. However, the woman stops him and asks him to save Kiriha, explaining that she's bound by an old arrangement and he must free her. When Kazuya asks how, she tells him to stop being a wuss and actually get strong so he can protect Kiriha instead of the other way around. She also tells him how to use his powers by using Kiriha's real name and waiting for an ultimate attack. Kazuya is left confused and asks her what Kiriha's real name is, but she says he already knows and wishes him good luck. After that, Kazuya wakes up to a kiss from Kiriha, and as she pulls him out of the water, Kukuri is waiting to smack her again. This time, Kazuya asks Kiriha to change back to an obi, because she cannot continue like this. But Kiriha tells him to shut it because he's her servant. However, when Kazuya commands her to return to her obi form using her true name Aya Sakura, she immediately does so, much to Kukuri's surprise. However, Kiriha starts slapping him across the face for doing this because he must fight Kukuri by himself now. But Kazuya says he'll be fine because he has her by his side. With that, Kazuya faces Kukuri and obviously fails to use Kiriha properly the first time, causing her to throw a fit. However, he quickly gets the hang of it, prompting Kukuri to use one of her strongest attacks, the Twisting Water Worm. In that crucial moment, Kazuya recalls that woman's advice and casts a shield, but Kiriha warns him that it won't be enough to stop the worm. However, when the worm attacks, Kazuya bends the shield to create an arrowhead and defeats it instantly. He then charges the goddess with a spiral weave, but when she uses an ice wall to shield herself, Kazuya increases the strength of his weave to drill through it. Despite the strong impact, Kukuri somehow survives and manages to get hold of Kiriha, holding an ice pick at her throat to make Kazuya do as she says. To save her life, Kazuya accepts the duty of malice and cleansing, and she finally lets Kiriha go. As the dark clouds vanish, Kazuya holds Kiriha in his arms, and Kokuyu descends with Chisato. With that, Kukuri tells Kazuya she has high hopes for him, but her mask falls off, and she turns into a lolly, making her lose all her aura. Embarrassed, she quickly covers herself and begs them not to look, but Kiriha bursts out laughing as she realizes Kukuri's entire gimmick is tied to the stupid mask. Kiriha then snatches the mask out of her hands and proceeds to give her an experience she can't mention at family dinners. That evening, she tells them this was all a ruse to have Kazuya command Kiriha, and she never planned to hurt him. She knew Kiriha wouldn't listen to her directly, so she made Kazuya command her by her real name so she would serve her indirectly. Hearing this pisses Kiriha off, and she turns Kukuri into a Beyblade. Later, Kazuya carries Kiriha on his way back home, and they both apologize to Chiasto for all the trouble they caused. After they go their ways, Kazuya promises to Kiriha that he will do his best on the malice and cleansing job, and says he's counting on her help. Back at the shrine, Kukuri recalls how Kiriha asked her to watch over Kazuya, and she wonders if it's really the best course of action. However, Kokuyu reminds her that they have bigger things to worry about, like their entire house being blown away. That night, Kazuya notices that Kiriha has turned into a shoddy, and she angrily tells him that it will take some time for her to recover. Kazuya then decides to check her for wounds, but she believes he's trying to smash and exposes her entire collection. Later, he washes her back in the shower and shampoos her hair, and Kiriha enjoys the pleasures of being small once again. She even flaps her foot in the bathtub because it's much bigger for her now, while also recalling how Kazuya used his mother Kanaka's technique during their fight with Kukuri. She also recalls how many years ago, Kanaka asked her to take care of little Kazuya if anything happened to her. But Kiriha took it lightly, thinking no one could hurt a raid boss like Kanaka. While lost in thought, she ends up passing out in the tub, and Kazuya immediately pulls her out, fanning her so she can get some air. Kiriha jokes that she's dying and wants to eat one last pudding before she meets her maker, but he knows she's capping. After seeing that the clothes don't fit Kiriha anymore, he asks his sister Kasumi if she has any of her old clothes left. But she starts freaking out, thinking his brother has become a diddler. She takes it upon herself to show him that older women pack a punch, but Kazuya gets fed up and leaves. He then calls Chisato for help, and she promises to let him know soon. Later, he meets Osamu outside and has him deliver clothes. But Osamu reminds him that age is not just a number. Kazuya then returns to his room with pudding and a new set of clothes for Kiriha, and she excitedly opens the bag to find things that'll be redacted in the Epstein files. After getting a beating from Kiriha, Kazuya reveals he actually got these from his wannabe mob psycho friend, who is apparently a degenerate. The following day, Kiriha tells Kazuya that he must train hard to perform his duties as the Malison cleanser. When Kazuya calls a hard pass, she tries to attack him, but her powers don't activate, leaving Kazuya worried. She admits she hasn't been able to use them properly ever since she fought Kukuri, and if they ever run into another wild Amasagi, she wouldn't be able to protect him. This is why she is persistent in training him so he can learn the art of wielding an obi. Later, Kazuya is jogging at the pace of a turtle, but she keeps pushing him to stop being a twink. After that, she turns into an obi, admitting that his technique against Kukuri was astonishing, and she wants him to demonstrate it again. Kazuya starts by casting Shield Weave, but fails miserably and admits that he has no idea how to use any of the skills. By the end of the day, Kiriha is pissed because they made zero progress today, and she cannot understand how Kazuya was able to use all his skills when he was fighting Kukuri. That night, while in the shower, she gives him a lecture on the nature of Tsugumomo, such as herself. Most Tsugumomo take human forms because, since they require a human wielder to operate at full capacity, taking human forms allows them to skip having a wielder. She adds that this form also has limitations before wrapping herself around him and asking him to describe what he feels. He tells her it's soft and warm, and Kiriha mentions that one cannot tell them apart from a regular human in this form, since they have the same anatomy too. Injuries that would be fatal to humans are also unalive Tsugumomo. Similarly, if the obi is damaged beyond repair, she will die. But she hasn't been able to test her limits other than minor cuts and bruises. Just then, she looks down to see that Kazuya Mini is also interested in her teachings, and Kazuya quickly covers himself while screaming that it's a natural reaction. Later, while they both chill in the bathtub, Kiriha reveals that its Tsugumomo cannot exist without humans, and their power comes from the bond they have with their owner. She also admits that she hadn't accepted him as her owner until the fight with Kukuri, so she was using the powers sustaining her existence to fight her, which is why she's become a loli now. Kukuri's reversion to youthful form is also proof that her power has waned as well. With so much more to explain, Kiriha suggests they do it later, and focus on him learning simple obi techniques. Meanwhile, at the shrine, Kukuri is freaking out because she has no money to fix the shrine, and no one is offering charity to a loli goddess. When she tries to charm the workers, they install a stopgap to cover the hole and run off, asking her to call them when she has the money. Back in the house, Kazuya practices making shields, but Kiriha rearranges his face with her foot because he's too slow. Kukuri is also practicing her skills in her new form, but she's also very sloppy. As Kiriha and Kazuya play Jenga, it starts to rain heavily, which means the water goddess and Kokayo are having a hard time doing anything. With the wind getting stronger, the whole shrine falls apart. And as Kukuri wonders where they will live now, Kokoyu tells her she has a place in mind. The following day, Kiriha and Kazuya are having combat practice under the bridge and are joined by familiar faces. When Kiriha explains that they're practicing range, Kukuri believes it's too basic for someone who almost defeated her. However, when she sees him struggling to pull a simple rock, Kiriha tells her that the fight was a fluke, and that's all he can manage now. This makes her freak out because she assigned Kazuya to be the Malison cleanser, but she decides to leave them be. As she leaves, Kiriha notices that they're going in the wrong direction and follows them to learn that they've made a new shrine inside a playground. She mocks her to her heart's content and reminds her that the Malison might spread if the goddess is in this state, but she reads a forecast saying that the chance of malison spreading this week is very low. The next day, Kazuya is called to the student council office, which leaves him confused. Inside, he meets President Tadata, who says it's been a while since they last spoke. When Kazuya says he has never spoken to him, Tadata fixes his hair to reveal that he's the person who attacked him after being possessed by the wig. Tadata then reveals that he's not into sausage, but he's made an exception for Kazuya because he's built like a twink. Tired of their rainbow love story, Kiriha takes human form and tells Tadata to get to the point. Tadata reveals he knows Kiriya because, after the wig incident, she was kind enough to explain the whole Amasogi thing to him. Tadata then tells him about a tabletop role-playing club that has taken over the research club's room and is causing problems for the council. As they head towards the room, Tadata says he sent a representative into the room, who came back crying about a monster. Just then, they run into Osamu, who immediately notices Kiriha and assumes she's the lolly Kazuya is diddling with. Just then, Tadata notices that the whole club room has disappeared, and Kiriha uses her kimono claps to confirm that something sus is going on here. Unbeknownst to them, the forecast Kukuri read them was from 2 months ago.
Women.
Which means her prediction of no malison was incorrect. Kiriha can't use her powers yet, so she suggests they hold a meeting in the student council room, only to run into an illusory wall that blocks the hallway. Just then, Nakajima, the president of Tabletop, appears and forces Tadata to accept Tabletop as an official club. When Tadata refuses, Nakajima draws a minotaur in his diary that comes to life and starts following them. While running away from it, the squad gets trapped in a room, and Kazuya realizes that the diary is the Amasagi, which allows them to arrange a counterplay using a fire extinguisher. However, when Nakajima rejoins them, Kazuya uses his training to close the distance and snatch the Amasogi from Nakajima. After explaining that it's harmful, they return it to Nakajima and make him tear it up, since he's the one who created it. However, the guy has stolen a page like Light Yagami and uses it to create a new minotaur. Unfortunately for him, Osamu had swapped the book with a fake one, and now the real one in his possession. He draws a flare dragon that destroys Nakajima's minotaur in a single attack. After that, they gather in the student council room, where Osamu draws a thicker and more plotted version of Kiriha, who immediately starts stomping on Kazuya's jewels. While she's at it, the squad makes Nakajima tear the book apart for real this time, causing the other Kiriha to disappear. A few days later, a guy named Hiroshi gives a love letter to Chisato, and while Kazuya and Kiriya watch from a distance, Chisato politely refuses. When the guy asks if he's taken ugly for her, she goes red and admits she already likes someone else. Kazuya is a little surprised by this, and Kiriha takes a sigh because he's an idiot. Later, Chisato is helping Kazuya with his homework when he mentions that he saw the confession. Chisato starts tweaking, thinking he was spying on her, but when he asks who this guy she likes is, she starts blushing and tells him it's none of his business. While he's teasing her, Kiriya starts looking through Chisato's bag for some pudding and ends up finding a voodoo doll. At first, Chisato gets anxious, but when Kazuya asks her what this is, she calmly tells them it's nothing. Meanwhile, Hiroshi is in a dark room fuming over the fact that he got rejected, but his computer screen lights up and gives him a message. The following day, Kazuya arrives at school to find that there's love in the air, but he's living underwater. As he heads to the hall, a girl comes running in and bumps into him. After accidentally giving him a glimpse of her cookie, she quickly covers herself and starts screaming at him. However, a sudden pop-up appears on screen, giving Kazuya a few dialogue options to choose from. In panic, he chooses the wrong one, prompting the girl to slap him and walk away in anger. Kazuya then heads to the class and finds everyone love-struck, so he asks Shiro what's happening. Shiro tells him that anyone who confesses to their crush under the cherry blossom tree is bound to get a joyride. Ignoring his yapping, Kazuya takes a seat and learns from Kiriha that this is the handiwork of a gal game Amasagi. After she explains the dating simulator games to him, Kazuya takes a walk in the halls and runs into Hiroshi and Chisato. When he tries to talk to Chisato, she starts acting strangely and tells Hiroshi that Kazuya is scaring her. Kazuya grabs Hiroshi by the collar and asks what he did to Chisato, only for her to slap him in the face for bullying Hiroshi. As they walk away, Hiroshi tells Kazuya that he should give up on Chisato because he's the best at pure heart and won't let slip. Having played the game, Kiriha immediately realizes Hiroshi is the Amasagi's owner, so Kazuya rushes back to stop him from swiping Chisato's V-card. Unfortunately for him, Hiroshi has his own fan club, whom he summons to get rid of Kazuya. After getting beaten up, He splits up from Kiriha to find a way to destroy the Yamagoshi, and he starts by visiting Osamu in the manga club room. Osamu reveals that he's a sweaty nerd when it comes to dating simulator games and draws the whole system on the whiteboard, which explains how to achieve maximum affection with any character. After graduating from Osamu's University of Riz Overlord, Kazuya looks around for Chisato and finds her in the halls. When he stops her, she gets annoyed and says she's on her way to meet Hiroshi. Just then, the dialogue box opens up, and he sees that there's a free speech option which he can use to appeal to Chisato, because he's known her for years. He chooses that option to tell her he needs her help with a math problem, which causes her to blush as she agrees to join him. Later, as she's teaching him, Kazuya sees another dialogue option, so he grabs her hands and tells her they're beautiful. However, his attempt to riz her fails miserably, and Osamu advises him to choose his moment carefully next time. After the next period, Kazuya and Osamu invite her for lunch, but Chisato isn't happy and asks why she's here. After Osamu gives her a flattering response, she begins to blush and opens her lunchbox, giving Kazuya another dialogue choice. This time, he uses free speech to tell her that her cooking reminds him of his mom's, which makes her blush. She gives him a bite of her omuris. So Kazuya gets up from his chair and says he can have them every day for the rest of his life. This hits Chisato so hard that she zones out for a few seconds before asking him why Kiriha didn't come to school today. Osamu quickly realizes that a free speech event has started, and Kazuya casually says Kiriha is napping in her gym clothes. This makes him lose all affection points he's built so far, but Osamu tells him to stay calm because they can still salvage this. However, Kazuya keeps spewing nonsense, which makes Chisato hate him. After failing spectacularly, he returns to the manga club room with Osamu, where Kiriha tells him that she couldn't find the Amasogi, which means they've lost. However, Osamu tells them they have only exhausted all the legal methods, but they can still use a bug in the game to achieve max affection with Chisato. The bug occurs right before the big confession after school, and if Kazuya does things right, he can overthrow Hiroshi and reclaim Chisato. Osamu asks him to think of the thing that can bring Chisato back, and Kazuya starts brainstorming. Later, right before Hiroshi is about to confess to Chisato, Kazuya comes running in and interrupts the moment. He then pulls out 2 dolls from his bag, one of which belongs to Chisato, and asks her to play house again. This reminds her of the time she used to play with Kazuya. But since the guy was worried about getting mocked, he decided to call it quits. However, Chisato asked him to keep one of the dolls so they could play with it later, if he wanted, and this memory maxes out her affection for Kazuya. Her eyes fill with happy tears as she runs into Kazuya's arms, leaving Shiro a forever virgin like any Skull viewers. Seeing this, Shiro runs away and hides somewhere in the school, so Kiriha leaves to find him while Chisato and Kazuya stay in the infirmary. Chisato then checks up on Kazuya, and he tells her he's just tired from all the work. As he closes his eyes, she takes the bed next to him. However, he wakes up tied to the bed with Chisato on top, trying to steal his V-card. Meanwhile, Osamu and Kiriha find Shiro, who tells them he was running the game in the computer lab. Osamu then reveals that the computer version of the game is for adults, and it ends with a lot of smashing. The boys rush to the computer lab to destroy the game just in time as Kiriha finds Kazuya and Chisato about to visit Pound Town. The next day, as the lovebirds avert eye contact in class, Kiriha tells Osamu that they had already separated by the time she arrived, and Kazuya didn't tell him anything, even after she tortured him. After that, she heads to Kukuri's new shrine to torture her for lying to them about the Malison report, and Kukuri apologizes for messing up. Kazuya asks Kiriha to take it easy, but she keeps spanking Kukuri's cakes until Kokoyo arrives in a uniform to tell them that she's leaving. When Kazuya asks where, she reveals they need money for repairing the shrine and paying the Malison forecast, so she has taken a part-time job. After Kokoyo leaves, Kukuri puts on her mask to fight Kiriha, but she can only summon a puddle of water, which makes Kiriha laugh. After she locks Kukuri in the walls of Jericho, Kazuya finally steps in and tells her to let Kukuri go, or she won't get any pudding. She agrees to let Kukuri go, and after he leaves to buy some pudding, Kiriha invites Kukuri for a chat. She asks Kukuri why her strength is so depleted, but Kukuri says she can't say yet and will let her know when the time is right. However, Kiriha gets serious and demands to know what's happening to her and why she's forcing Kazuya to do Malison cleansing. This sparks another argument between the two, and Kukuri resolves it by offering to build sand castles with Kiriha. However, when some boys destroy it and make fun of them for being muddy monsters, Kiriha chases after them to give them a lesson. Soon after, Kazuya returns with some pudding and is confused to see Kiriha chasing boys. Later, Kiriya makes Kukuri bathe her because she was too shy to let Kazuya into the shower. Kukuri then notices that Kiriya's jugs are growing, and Kiriya notes that her height has also gone up, which means she's regaining her spiritual energy. As they get in the bathtub, Kiriya once again asks her why she's depleted. But when Kukuri refuses to tell her, they start fighting on the spot. In the end, they get exhausted, and Kazuya has to fan them both before sending Kukuri back to the park. At night, Kazuya eats half of his dinner and is about to take the rest to his room for Kiriya, but his sister Kasumi thinks he's secretly adopted a stray cat. Just then, he notices that Kiriya is actually with them at the table, and he learns that both Kasumi and his dad, Kazuaki, are already acquainted with her. Kazuaki then tells him about his time in school when he gave a love letter to Kanaka, but Kiriya tore it in front of them. When they went to the movies once, he tried to hold Kanaka's hand, but Kiriya intervened again. She ruined dozens of romantic moments in the poor man's love life, and he's terrified of her to this day. Later, while they're having pudding, Kazuma decides to give some to Kukuri and Kokoyu. However, they find the park completely destroyed, and Kukuri jumps into Kiriya's arms crying. Kokoyu explains that a boy was injured on the slide, and the government removed the park because it was a safety hazard. Kiriya recalls that it was the boy who got hurt because she was chasing him, so she brings them into Kazuya's house. They hold a family meeting to discuss the issue, and Kasumi refuses to let her brother live under the same roof with a pair of humongous melons. Kazuaki also refuses to let the girls stay, so Kiriya starts reading the love letters he had given to Kanaka until the man folds and lets them stay. The following day, Kazuya wakes up and heads to the shower, only to run into Kokoyu and her two giant peaches. He immediately recoils back and apologizes, but Kokoyu calmly tells him she's fine with him playing with her puppies because she's grateful for what he's done for them. After that, Kiriya forcefully drags Kukuri to a shrine of a different goddess so they can borrow some money from her. Once there, Kukuri calls out to Taguri, who opens the shrine doors and sucks them inside, where she introduces herself. Kukuri reluctantly tells her she has to borrow more money, and Taguri agrees to let her have it if she wins a game of concentration. Despite seeming like a simple game, Kukuri knows it has strings attached, so she whispers something in Kiriya's ear to keep her on edge. After rolling the dice, Kiriya gets the first turn and pulls out both cards of 5,000 yen. After she loses her turn, Kazuya flips two cards, and both of them demand freaky actions, which pisses Kiriya off. Kukuri then reveals that Taguri created this game to satisfy her degenerate fetishes, and they read the banner on the wall to learn that Taguri likes to diddle with Lolas. Kiriya immediately makes a run for it, but Kukuri tries to stop her by reminding her that they need money. The game resumes with Kukuri flipping cards, and she loses her turn after revealing two more freaky cards. Lastly, it's Taguri's turn, and she flips both cards of smooching, which leaves the girls terrified for their V cards. Taguri ends up picking Kukuri for this round and proceeds to give her an intense cardo. She then flips two cards of the candy stick game, which she uses to get a taste of Kiriya's candy. She continues to match more degenerate cards and makes the girls reach Cloud 9 multiple times until only one unflipped card remains on the board. She ends up pulling one half of the full body massage card, and since she knows the position of all the other cards, Kiriya distracts her by asking her to take her to the bathroom. In the meantime, Kukuri changes the position of the cards, and once they return, Taguri can immediately tell that they've cheated. She can tell by spotting the fingerprints on said cards and offers grave punishment if she pulls the correct one. By some miracle, she ends up pulling the wrong card and finally realizes that the cards weren't moved at all, and Kukuri simply wiped fingerprints from the cards and applied them to others. Kiriya proudly announces that they have won, only for Taguri to point at the notice board that says touching cards out of turn is prohibited. Since the rule says all the remaining cards now belong to her, she proceeds to diddle with the girls until their knees feel weak, but they end up winning 175,000 yen in the end, which will help them rebuild Kukuri's shrine. A few days later, Kiriya is watching a comedy show on cable, but when Kazuaki asks if he can watch sports, she gives him a death stare, prompting the poor guy to use the radio. However, when she begins laughing like a maniac, Kasumi turns it off and tells her to do chores like Kukuri. When Kiriya refuses, Kasumi threatens to ban her supply of pudding, which forces Kiriya to delve into her housewife phase. After both girls spend the day preparing ingredients, Kasumi realizes they're out of sauce, so she asks Kazuya to grab it from the store. He takes both Lolas to the store with him, and they start drooling when they see all sorts of snacks and chocolates on display. Once there, Kukuri helps Kazuya grab all the ingredients, and when she notices a couple in the store, She starts daydreaming of marrying Kazuya and having a love life with him. Just then, Kiriya shows up with a basket full of pudding, but when Kazuya returns them to the store, she starts singing a sad song, which attracts the attention of the whole store. In the end, Kazuya gets fed up and buys one pack for her, which makes her super happy. On their way to the counter, Kukuri spots packs of her favorite snacks, but unlike Kiriha, she decides not to trouble Kazuya. Later, they find a huge line at one of the counters, and it's full of degenerates who want to get a closer look at Kokoyo's jugs because she's working there. After she's done with her shift, the squad returns home and joins the rest of the family for a delicious dinner. Once they finish, Kiriha immediately rushes to the kitchen to grab her pudding, and Kukuri gets sad watching her have it. Just then, Kazuya brings her favorite snack, revealing that it was already on the list of groceries because she's been a good girl. The following day, Kazuya finds himself in the bathtub getting freaky with the ladies, making him recall how he got here. Before this, he went to school and was shocked to see Shiro rizzing up all the female classmates. When Chisato tried to teach them manners, the girls turned on her and told her to skedaddle. Osamu found it curious because no girl had ever touched Shiro with a 10-foot pole, so he declared it a supernatural occurrence. Just then, Kiriha jumped out of Kazuya's bag, revealing that this is definitely an amasogi because Kukuri told her that the malison will be high this week. Since it's Kazuya's job to cleanse it, he confronted Shiro head-on and accused him of using a magical tool to become Mr. Popular. He told Shiro that such love is a mere illusion, and he must destroy the tool at once. But Shiro argued that the girls noticed his charms on their own. However, Shiro accidentally revealed that he had used a magical perfume, prompting everyone in his class to attack him. Luckily, Kazuya saved him, but noticed that all the boys in their class had turned into zombies because their desire to get a sloppy toppy was too high. To save him, Kazuya grabbed Shiro and made a run for it, expertly dodging all the zombies and hiding in a class. When the zombies started attacking from the windows, Kazuya finally had enough and beat the living bejesus out of everyone. After things calmed down, he tied up Shiro and demanded an explanation. So Shiro told her he was rejected by a girl who knew he was asking out a new girl every week and getting rejected from all of them. As she left, Shiro got frustrated and started blaming his new perfume, which was advertised to attract chicks. He decided to leave it behind, but the perfume started speaking to him, and that's how he rizzed up every girl in the school. With the story out, Kazuya asked Shiro to destroy the bottle himself because if someone else did it, he would face punishment called malice in atonement. After reminiscing about his good days, Shiro smashed it to the ground in anger. However, the bottle bounced and spilled on top of Kazuya, causing every single woman in town to chase after him. After he finally reached home, he ran into Kasumi, who was unaffected by the perfume. So he let his guard down and decided to take a bath. As he placed the perfume bottle on the side, Kasumi joined him with her plots exposed, followed by Kokuyu, who offered to wash his back. Soon after, the other girls joined him too and made him bust 3 times before playing rock, paper, scissors to decide who got to taste his sausage first. Being a wuss that he is, Kazuya smashed the bottle himself and broke the spell. But this resulted in Shiro getting malice in atonement by having a body odor that smelled worse than a fat Karen who hasn't showered in weeks. A few days later, Kazuya is training with Kukuri at her shrine, and despite making decent progress, Kazuya is a long way from perfecting his skills. Being slow and clumsy, Kazuya gets beaten up once again by Kiriha, who punishes him with 100 laps around the shrine. The following day, Kazuya is sleeping in class when Osamu walks up to ask if he's okay. He reveals he's been bullied day and night by that blue-haired freak and barely has any time to rest. Just then, the class hears an announcement stating that Kazuya, Osamu, and Chisato are required at the student council office. Once they get there, they hear some commotion inside and open the door to find a bald Tadata, who casually puts his wig on and takes his seat. Kazuya immediately points to what just happened, so Kiriha comes out of the bag and explains that Tadata is experiencing malice in atonement. She mentions that she's the one who destroyed the wig Amasagi Tadata created, and while it goes away peacefully if the owner destroys it, it punishes the owner if someone else destroys it. As such, Tadata has lost all the hair on his body, making Chisato question if she would have gone bald too if someone else destroyed her Amasagi. Kiriha tells her that the malice in atonement depends on the nature of the Amasogi, which means everyone gets a different punishment. After Tadata assures them that the atonement won't last, he gets down to business. He tells them that Class 5-1 has reported seeing a ghost of a girl named Nago in the bathroom, and the said girl was reported dead 2 years ago. Thus, Tadata wants them to cosplay Ghostbusters and find out what's causing this paranormal event. Kiriha immediately mentions that ghosts do not exist, which leads her to believe that this is the work of an Amasagi. They split up to investigate and learn that she jumped from the roof and left no note behind. She was a quiet girl, but she became quite cheerful just a few days before she died. She was also in a fan club of a boy named Yuichi, and she had a younger sister who was smart and athletic. After learning all this, as the squad shares the info between them, they hear two girls arguing about something nearby. One of them is Nanako from the newspaper club, and once the squad approaches them with their ghost story, she gets super excited. Osamu then figures that the girl she was arguing with belonged to the Yuichi fan club, and Nanako admits she couldn't learn anything from her. Just then, they hear a scream and the other girl, Kosakabe, jumps out of the bathroom as if she's seen a ghost. Just then, Nago walks out of the room in flesh and asks Kosakabe where she hid the letter. Kazuya immediately tries to restrain her, but she dodges his attack and leaps towards him. Before Kazuya can respond, she suddenly runs away, which prompts Kiriha to plant her boots in Kazuya's cakes for being slow and stupid. Meanwhile, Nanako is super excited to see his powers and keeps asking him to show more. Later, they take Kakabe to the nurse's office, where Kiriha explains a new type of Amasagi called Kamioni. It is a foe that's born from regrets that linger in the hair of the deceased, and it is different from the one Tadata made, which is called Pseudo-Kamioni. Chisato asks if there is a host, if it's an Amasagi, and Kiriha agrees, believing that a living human whose wishes resonate with the deceased's regrets must be the culprit. Kazuya realizes that someone will face massless and atonement if they forcefully destroy the Amasagi, so they turn to Kusakabe to learn more about it. She wakes up and tells them how a bunch of girls, including her, would fangirl over Yuichi, and they all agreed to share him. However, when Yuichi started liking Nago, things became awkward, so Kosakabe decided to leave. She believes the other girls started bullying Nago, and the main culprit was a girl named Muratsuki, who was also the first person to discover the body. Later in the student council room, the squad concludes that the ghost is visiting all the girls who were in the club. Just then, another member of the council shows up and reveals that Nago's younger sister is also enrolled here, which Tadata finds weird because he is supposed to know about every student in school. Turns out, her last name changed because her parents were divorced, and she's none other than Nanako from the newspaper club. Kazuya immediately rushes and stops her before she game-ends Muratsuki, and Nanako admits she simply wants to know why her sister yeeted herself. Kiriha finds it weird and believes something else is going on, so when he asks Nanako about the letter, she admits she knows nothing about it. She then turns to Muratsuki to tell them about the letter, believing she is the one who hid it. Muratsuki finally reveals that Nago distanced herself from Yuichi just for their sake, but they forced her to leave the club, which made her depressed. However, she got over it soon and gave them an earful before declaring that she would confess to Yuichi. Later that day, Muratsuki saw her going to the roof and decided to follow her so she could apologize for the bullying. But when she got to the top, she only found Nago's shoes and a note. Muratsuki got so scared that she never read the note and hid it because she thought she was the reason behind this incident. Muratsuki then heads home and brings the letter to Nanakai, which reveals that after the whole bullying incident, a growth started to appear on Nago's chest. It soon took the form of a human face and would say things she was too scared to say. This growth initially helped her turn her life around and promised to leave once her wishes were fulfilled. The thing she wanted the most was to go out with Yuichi, and even after he agreed, the growth told her she still had to prevent someone from stealing Yuichi from her. That someone was a smarter and more athletic version of herself, who was none other than her younger sister, Nanakai. The growth told Nago that she had to off her sister, and Nago knew that's what she wanted deep inside too. It was getting increasingly hard for her to resist the growth, so Nago decided to yeet herself to protect her younger sister. Hearing this, Kiriha finally realizes that the Amasogi wants to off Nanako and immediately signals Kazuya to protect her. This starts a high-stakes fight between Kazuya and the Amasogi, but Kazuya is too weak for the ghost. Kiriha asks him to run, but after he refuses, Kiriha guides him on how to defeat the ghost. By some miracle, he manages to defeat it, and Kiriha gives Nanako a speech on how her sister gave her own life to protect her, so she must live for her sake. She also praises Kazuya for handling himself well, but she also beats him up for defying her orders. Elsewhere, the fire goddess Honhoka attacks her pupil, Tsunao, and her Sugumomo Kotetsu with a strong attack, and after she comes out unscathed, she gives her the job of malice and cleaning. Tsunao then seeks permission to visit the city of Kamioka for her duties, and the fire goddess permits her to go. Meanwhile, Kazuya and the others fill Tadata in on how they resolved the issue with Nanako and her sister, and Kazuya is glad the girl didn't face any malice and atonement despite him being the one to destroy the Amasogi. Just then, Nanako enters the room, and they ask if she's okay, prompting her to reveal that she can't talk anymore. Everyone is confused because she was fine yesterday, and Kiriha reveals that Milson atonement is delayed in some cases. Kazuya apologizes for putting her through this, but she tells her it's fine because he kinda saved her life. However, Kiriha sternly says that it's all Nanako's fault before exiting the room, leaving everyone confused. After school, Kazuya tells Kiriha that she didn't need to be so rude to Nanako, but she brushes it off and demands some pudding. Just then, Kazuya gets punched in the face, and he looks up to see Sunao. She immediately starts attacking him, so Kiriha steps out of the bag to ask why she's after Kazuya. Sunao simply tells her not to interfere, and attacks Kazuya again, and this starts an epic fight between them. Despite Kiriha gaining the upper hand, Sunao quickly defeats her and punches Kazuya in the face. She then shames him for being a pathetic loser before walking off, but Kiriha is frustrated and tries to backstab her. However, Kotetsu jumps out and blocks the attack, leaving Kiriha and Kazuya in shock. Sunao scolds him for interfering in her battle and reminds him that he's merely a tool, forcing him to change back to a katana. After that, Sunao introduces herself and reveals that she's come here to test their skills. She turns to Kazuya, asking him why he's a little beechen despite being a malison cleaner, and states that he's unfit to replace Kanaka. However, Kazuya doesn't remember her, so when she tells him Kanaka is his mother, he finally remembers seeing her in a dream. Kiriha asks her how she knows about Kanaka, but Sunao refuses to tell her and says she needs to inform the local god of what happened. Knowing the said god personally, Kiriha takes them to Kukuri's shrine, where the lolly steps out to farm Samura, only to get humiliated by Kiriha. As Sunao tends to her, she recalls seeing Kazuya use Kanaka's skills against the ghost of Masoji. She went to Kuriha's shrine afterwards and learned that Kanaka had passed away and her Abi was in possession of her son Kazuya. On that day, Sunao asked Kukuri's permission to challenge Kazuya to a duel, and Kukuri generously agreed to it. Sunao then reminds her that a region's strongest warrior becomes the malison cleanser of said area. But Kazuya is more useless than Sakura and definitely does not deserve this position. She believes she is the better candidate for this job and challenges Kazuya to a duel to determine who takes the role, leaving him in shock. A few years prior, Sunao's brother Su was murdered, so she went to Honoka and asked her to give her a powerful weapon to avenge him. Honoka told her to scattle because, unlike her brother, she was not a malison cleanser, and her brother lost a fair battle to a foe, which meant she didn't stand a chance at all. The goddess reminded her that Su only wanted her to live a normal and happy life, and he became a malison cleanser to protect her. He died doing what he loved, and the goddess asked Sunao to respect Su's wishes. However, she went home and beat the living soul out of Kotetsu, telling him that they must grow stronger together from now on. One day, she went into the forest and used Kotetsu to locate the monstrous Emisagi, who offed her brother, only to run into Kanaka, who defeated it in a single blow. Frustrated, she charged at Kanaka, but Kiriha knocked her out without hesitation. When Sunao woke up, Kanaka gently asked her why she attacked them, and she told them the whole story. She then started tweaking because Kanaka robbed her of the chance to avenge her dead brother. So Kanaka told her to get stronger and duel her once she's grown up. In the following years, Sunao kept challenging Kanaka, but stood no chance against her. To become stronger, she even joined a malison cleanser school, but after she graduated from there, Kanaka was gone. Sunao admits that although she sought revenge from Kanaka, she also admired her for everything she taught her. Being her pupil, Sunao believes she deserves to be her successor and challenges Kazuya to a duel. Kiriha angrily accepts the challenge, but when she looks at Kazuya, the man looks like he lost his will to live. The next day, Kiriha invites him to train, but he becomes depressed and won't leave his bed. He blames himself for Nanako and Tadata's atonements since he attracts malison, so he thinks the world would be better off without him. Kiriha reminds him that he has a duty to perform, but Kazuya believes Sunao can do it better than he can. Hearing this, Kiriha gets frustrated and strips his plot armor before joining him inside his blanket. As she cuddles up to him, she gently tells him that locking himself inside his room is not the solution. She believes Kazuya is running away, but the man says he just wants to make sure no one suffers because of him. He also thinks Kiriha is tired of him, but Kiriha crushes his jewels and angrily tells him that she has never thought of him that way. She tells him she would stand by him even if he dropped out of art school or became the next Eren Yeager. She goes on a ramble about how she wouldn't even be here without him, finally admitting that she would be lonely if he were gone. Hearing this, Kazuya finally eases up and promises to do his best as a malison cleanser. Just then, a bright flash occurs in the room, and Kiriha suddenly grows in size. so she rewards Kazuya by showing him what those hands can do. After that, she recalls how Sunao showed them all of her techniques because she wanted to have a fair fight with him before giving him a week to prepare. She admits that Sunao is much stronger than he is. But when Kazuya promises not to give up, she turns on her cowgirl mode and promises to let him hit it if he wins.
Yeah, boy.
Just then, Kasumi and Kukuri enter the room and immediately pull Kiriha off, leaving the man high and dry. Later that day, Kiriha takes Kazuya under the bridge, where they once again practice the range obi with more success than before. Kiriha then moves on to Sunao's range, which is pretty short given that she uses a katana. However, she also has a wind slash and ground tracer attack, which gives her the range advantage. On top of that, Kiriha is made from an obi while Kotetsu is made from a blade, which means that Little Runt can easily chop her up. Chisato figures Sunao and Kotetsu have the upper hand in all scenarios, but Kiriha has an ace up her sleeve. Meanwhile, Sunao is practicing with Honoka and manages to go toe-to-toe with her. After sparring, Sunao tells the goddess that she has no chance of losing because Kazuya is weaker than Yamcha, and her training with Kanaka has already taught her most of the obi's techniques. Sunao is confident in her victory, but Kotetsu seems worried and asks for permission to speak. Sunao tells him to shut it, but Honoka permits him to speak, and he mentions that although Kazuya is weak, he is still a malice and cleanser, which means he must have passed the qualification test. He asks Sunao not to underestimate the main character of the show, but Sunao believes that Kazuya simply used wall weave to protect himself from Kukuri's attacks. She believes that despite its excellent defense, wall weave renders the user immobile, which will not work against her. She then tells Kotetsu to just follow orders like a tool, and even though the guy shuts up, Honoka knows he's got a point. That night, Kiriha bullies Kazuya into sharing a bathtub with her, but he admits he's still embarrassed because she's a girl. She then tells him to get his mind out of the gutter and reminds him that Kukuri has created water dolls that would absorb all the damage done to the users. This is to prevent fatal injuries to the fighters, and once a doll breaks, the duel will be over. However, Kiriha reveals that the doll only absorbs damage inflicted on humans, which means she and Kotetsu are susceptible to damage. To counter this, Kiriha can use her projections, which are not as strong as her real self, but can be regenerated as long as she has spiritual power. Her obi is also able to recover, but during the recovery period, Kazuya won't be able to use it, which means he will have to rely on projections. With his current skill, he can use 2 projections on top of the real obi, and he must use his head when deciding which to use. Kiriha also tells him to use the real obi if the need arises, even if it means she can die. As Kazuya silently listens, she tells him to say what's on his mind, and Kazuya says he can't bring himself to let her get hurt by using the real obi. Thus, he promises to win the duel and protect her at the same time, and this causes Kiriha to blush really hard. She quickly goes wild and pins him down, reminding him that it's her job to protect him before popping his coconuts. After that, they tuck themselves into bed, and Kiriha softly tells him that he's done well this week, and she'll let him pet her kitty just for tonight. Later, Kiriha falls asleep, while Kazuya has another meeting with Kanaka in a white void. When he tells her he offered to protect Kiriha, Kanaka starts laughing and then tells him that Kiriha is the one who's always protecting people. She has been this way with all her previous owners, so his telling her that he'll protect her instead might have taken her breath away. Kanaka jokes that Kiriha might be falling for him after all the freaky things he's done to her, along with the rest of the chicks around him. After teasing him with illusions, Kanaka asks him to take up on Kiriha's offer and show her what his fingers can do. But Kazuya says he loves how things are right now, and he wouldn't want them to change. Hearing this makes Kanaka proud, but then she notices that it's time for her to leave. As she turns away, Kazuya starts to wonder if she's his mother, but Kanaka tells him not to think too much, as that part of his memories has been sealed away. The following day, Kazuya heads to the shrine where Kukuri oversees the duel, stating that there are 3 ways to win. First is to knock the opponent out of the shrine grounds. Second is to do enough damage to the opponent to break their water doll, and third is straight up quitting like a little beachin. After the scene builds up through the inner monologues of all 4 participants, Kukuri finally initiates the duel. Kazuya quickly charges at Sunao and uses a dummy weave to close the distance, only for Sunao to hurl him back. He uses the dummy once again, but when she uses a ranged attack to destroy it, Kazuya cleverly uses the second projection to land a hit on her. As Kukuri watches closely, Honoka shows up as a doll to watch the duel and is surprised to see Kazuya because she was told he's a total loser. As the duel continues, Sunao catches on to Kazuya's counterattack technique, so he switches it up by creating a tangle ball, something she's never seen before. Despite Kotetsu's warning, Sunao charges in and realizes she messed up when the ball turns into a sledgehammer at the last second and sends her flying. After taking that hit, Sunao warms up to Kazuya's tricky attacks and keeps blocking everything thrown at her. Not only that, but she even manages to land a hit on Kazuya and puts him on defense. Turns out, Sunao can extend the range of her attacks by lowering the power, and Kazuya is forced to use the real OB to block her attack. After taking damage, the OB disappears to regenerate, leaving Kazuya with only one projection and the real OB. With Sunao closing in, Kazuya refuses to use the real OB to form a shield because he's worried about hurting Kiriha. Just when Sunao swings her sword, Kazuya uses a new skill called the handweave, watershed, to completely deflect her attack. Both Kukuri and Honoka are surprised to see this innovation from him, and before Sunao can recover from shock, Kazuya quickly lands a counterattack on her, which damages her water doll even more. Being one hit away from losing, Sunao starts to run back, but Kazuya chases after her to finish her off. However, he makes a slight mistake and gets hit for the second time, and now both of them are one hit away from losing. As both of them reset, Kiriha tells Kazuya that he can only block with 2 OB, while Sunao figures she must close the distance and finish him off with the sword. At that moment, Honoka declares that Kazuya has already won because both of them have hit a stalemate, which gives Kiriha a chance to recover. Honoka also reveals that she used her strongest attack, Skyfire, on Sunao during the trials, and she easily deflected it because it was in her range. Honoka believes Sunao cannot close the gap between her and Kazuya right now, but Kukuri thinks otherwise. Meanwhile, Kiriha advises Kazuya to stay on the defensive, but he refuses as he wants to beat Sunao at her best. When Kiriha asks what he's trying to do, he reveals he wants to show her that Sugumomo are more than tools. He then closes the distance from Sunao, leaving her confused because he was sure to win if he had waited. Once she realizes he wants to beat her at her best, she prepares her ultimate technique, Winged Cutter, which she used to deflect Skyfire. Meanwhile, Kazuya fuses with Kiriha to uncover a secret technique called Divine Possession, which is only possible if the user has a strong bond with their Sugumomo. This gives Kazuya Ultra Instinct, so when Sunao uses her Winger Cutter, he uses the OB as armor and deflects the attack. Both of them lock into an epic exchange of blows that goes on for a while until Kazuya gains the upper hand and breaks Kotetsu's grip. He then uses his palm to use an attack called Coiling Serpent, hitting Sunao in the abdomen and breaking her water doll. With that, Kukuri declares him the winner, and Kiriya emerges from the bag, smacking his cakes to show her praise. As Sunao worries for Kotetsu's life, Honoka tells her why she lost and reveals that Kotetsu would be fine after some recovery. She also reveals that Kazuya could have game-ended Kotetsu if he wanted to, and she should show him some respect for being honorable. Finally, Sunao admits defeat and bows out of respect before leaving. Kazuya is surprised because he thought Sunao saw Kotetsu as a tool, but Kiriya says that was just the tsundere inside her. Kukuri then jokes that they barely won, but Kiriha argues that they just wanted to put on a show for everyone. Amid their yapping, Kazuya collapses from exhaustion and stays bedridden till night. Kiriha reveals it's the side effect of Divine Possession and assures Kukuri that he will be back on his feet soon. Kukuri asks if Kiriha would have protected Kazuya if he had collapsed during the fight, and she admits she would have been useless because she was still recovering. She also reveals that they only tested this technique for a few seconds in training, and this is the first time they used it properly. Just then, Kasumi calls them for dinner, but Kukuri feeds Kazuya with his own hands. When Kasumi asks what happened to him, the girls brush it off, leading her to believe her brother was diddled with until his sausage broke. Seeing this, Kiriha suggests they help Kazuya with more than just food, and after Kukuri agrees, Kiriha reveals that they should give him a warm bath. Kazuya says he can skip a bath for today, but Kiriha argues that he was sweating like a pig in his duel and needs a bath. Kukuri starts to get moist because she's too embarrassed to look at Kazuya, so Kiriha puts a blindfold on him to make things kinky. With that, Kukuri begins washing his back, saying he deserves some service because he did an amazing job today. After she's done, Kiriha turns him around and asks Kukuri to wash his Excalibur, which makes her blush. However, she remembers all the things he's done for her and proceeds to remove the last bit of plot armor, exposing Kazuya's ultimate weapon in battle mode. After all is said and done, Kukuri is the first one to fall asleep, so Kiriha decides to reward Kazuya by letting him hit it all night. The next day, Kukuri wakes up to find them without armor and starts freaking out. prompting Kiriha to restrain her with her obi. Hearing this commotion, Kasumi comes running in to protect her Lyle bro, who doesn't even remember what happened because he passed out midway. Later, as Kazuya is leaving for school, Kiriha chooses to stay behind because she is planning something with Kukuri and Kokyu. Meanwhile, Sunao meets her mother, Suzuri, who scolds her for losing to a boy and damaging Kotetsu. Since she initiated the duel and lost, she is stripped of her inheritance because her clan does not allow failures. There are only two ways for her to regain her inheritance, and the first method is to end Kazuya's life, which is impossible for her. The second option is to marry Kazuya, which is equally as unlikely for a tsundere bum like her. Meanwhile, Kukuri's shrine is broken again after the duel, and Kokyu can't pay for repairs with her part-time job. She suggests they ask Taguri for more money, but Kukuri refuses because Taguri is a nasty freak that belongs behind bars. Meanwhile, Kazuya heads to the school and learns that a new transfer student will be joining them today. Shiro immediately starts imagining her having bazookas bigger than Mount Everest, but he's interrupted when the teacher enters the class. Soon after, she asks the transfer student to come in, and she happens to be none other than Kiriha. From summoning her for the first time to sharing a class with her, Kazuya is happy to see how far they have come. That's it for this video. Let us know in the comments if you want part 2. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and watch this video on screen.